All right, guys, today I am tying up a few more rubber leg jigs. Another little redfish here. The whole reason that I built the Upgrade Jig was so that way you guys could buy these things and you know, and do it yourself, you know, tie bucktails, tie rubber leg jigs to them. As you can see though, I've got a lot of rubber leg jigs. I've got piles of bucktails. I've got the 1/2 ounce chartreuse eye. I use a couple different kinds of hardener. I use a Gorilla Glue, and then I use Sally Hansen's. Sally Hansen's tends to run a lot thinner. Gorilla Glue tends to be a little bit thicker. So cold days, it's really tough to use the Gorilla Glue because it kind of coagulates, gets thicker. And the same is true if it's really warm outside. The Sally Hansen's is almost too thin. It gets all over everything. So I have both of those. They serve different purposes, but I'm gonna get into this. I've got some red thread. I've got a ton of different colors, and I am going to tie up a swim jig. All right, guys, you get a great old man hand shot here. Here we go. So I'm just gonna basically put a little bit of thread there. I am gonna do basically the same. Let's see. Let's do this color scheme. So I'm gonna do a chartreuse black and you know, kind of like a watermelon green color. Let's start there. So I essentially take 2 pieces of the watermelon green. I will lay these things down. I try to make the top a little bit shorter than the bottom. Try to make the top just a little bit shorter than the bottom, and I'll explain that later. I guess I can explain it now while I'm tying it. So the reason that I tie the top a little bit shorter is because I kind of want it to flare out at the top, and then I want the bottom to be long enough to where I can, when I trim it, it's trimmed to length, however long I want to keep it. So on the black, I usually just do like maybe 1/3 of the strands, and I will kind of feather this throughout. I have had a couple people ask me about how I tie bucktails and how I tie rubber leg jigs, and I am not the best person at it. Don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of pros out there. I am definitely not a pro, but I think that I do a pretty good job, and I like to take a little bit of pride in what I do, so I try to make them as appealing as possible. And I just thread a few chartreuse in here too. I don't want a ton, just a little accent. And then that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, you can add more green to it if you'd like. You can add darker colors if you'd like. I mean, you can literally come up with a million different ways to do this. This is just how I do it. And then I put basically 3 half hitches. I know some of y'all use fancy vices. I would love to have one someday, but I don't. I know that y'all use fancy vices. I know that you guys use fancy knots that you tie, but you really don't need any of that. I've caught dozens and dozens and dozens of fish without the knots coming undone, without losing anything really. So if you want to use a whip finish, go right ahead. I don't do it because I haven't felt the need to do it yet. Put a little Sally Hansen's on there. Today's kind of cold, so Sally Hansen's is the best option for me today. And then once I get done with that, I literally just trim the ends. Sally Hansen doesn't take but a couple seconds to cure, so I don't have to worry about my skirt getting, you know, glued together. And this is basically ready to roll. So there you have it. There is a swim jig right there. with a little bit of green pumpkin, some chartreuse, and some black. When I send this out to the customer, they can leave it this length or they can trim it if they'd like. So that is a pretty good representation of you know, a great swim jig. And once again, that hook keeper is positioned perfectly back here to where you can pin soft plastic, whether you're fishing a crawl trailer, whether you're fishing a swim bait, a fluke style bait, it doesn't really matter. You have tons of keeper here close to the hook of the shank of the hook to be able to pin that bait. So I did that in less than 5 minutes. Okay guys, so I'm getting ready to do my 1/8 ounce. This is tiny. I've had several people ask me, are you going to tie rubber leg jigs or bucktails to the 1/8 ounce? The answer is absolutely. I think that it has a role to be played, especially in the early and late parts of the year when the water's still cold. So I'm gonna get right into this. This one I'm gonna do as a PB&J style color. And I'm gonna do it as a puffball jig. So the difference here is that I'm gonna take my purple and I'm gonna take my gold and I'm gonna fold those over, okay? And when I fold those over, that's what's gonna give me the puffball style jig. You can fold them over again if you'd like to. I'm not going to on this particular jig. I know some guys will fold them over twice, 3 times to make the hair and the fibers really, really short. I'm not really that concerned about it on this one. These puffball jigs are super fun. They give a great little two-tone look to what you're trying to do. And that's essentially it. I'm putting 3 wraps on this, and then I'm gonna come back in and I'm gonna do my, you know, my half hitches. I'm gonna do 3 half hitches. And this puffball jig is literally done at that point. You know, once again, I'm gonna put glue on it. But you don't have to put glue on it. I'm gonna put glue on it because I just want a little bit extra to hold that on there. So as you can see, I did what, 2 or 3 half hitches. I tied that on there. Sally Hansen's is getting ready to go on. You can see that the Sally Hansen's getting a little bit thinner now as it's starting to warm up and as I got it underneath this light, which will impact the fibers of what you're using. The rubber leg, you know, jigs will kind of stick together around this neck part from the Sally Hansen's being so thin. That's why I switch over and use Gorilla Glue once it starts getting too warm. Basically trim my ends off here. Once again, I leave the top ends a little bit shorter than the bottom ends. And then you just kind of take your scissors down through here and you just trim all of these loops. And now this is gonna make a jam up puffball style jig. And the cool thing about this is it's got that ultra sharp hook on it, but it's also got that great bait keeper. And that bait keeper is what you're really gonna focus on. This is a 2/0 hook. Kind of looks a little bit goofy, but honestly, once it gets wet, it flares out perfectly. You can put a small little trailer on this thing, like a little pork. You can put a little bit of a, you can put a little TRD chunk on here. I just cut this little TRD chunk off. You can put this on here, you know, and then you've got such an amazing presentation. You know, there's the bait keeper that is not going anywhere. You've got, you know, your little puffball style jig on an 1/8 ounce. This is gonna be a smallmouth, largemouth killer. Walleye are gonna eat this thing up. You'll probably even catch a few panfish on this, to be honest. But there you have it. There is the 1/8 ounce Upgrade puffball style. I did that in less than 4 minutes. That's a couple quick little tutorials on how to tie rubber leg jigs. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Make sure that you shop on our Shopify site and come visit us.